So let's talk a little bit more about how to manage your plan if your business income is a little bit more on the volatile side. So, as an example, I've spoken to a couple of different clients who work as attorneys. So sometimes, their income fluctuates and it's feast or famine, depending on when their settlement cases, come in and a whole bunch of other factors. So, would a plan still make sense in that situation if business income is, pretty volatile year to year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need to go into these plans with long-term intent and assuming I'm going to have this plan for, the rest of my life in theory, right? But, you're probably not going to have it the rest of your life. You're going to have it 5, 10, 20 years, whatever the time frame is. And so they're permanent plans. And so, what you fund one year affects another year. So yes, if you had a situation where, you had someone with some very high funding, like let's say you had a litigation attorney, and maybe they make $3 million this year. And maybe next year they're going to make nothing, or at least they say they're going to make nothing. Well, then absolutely front loading, contributing the maximum, doing everything that you can do when you're in a very, very high bracket makes the most sense. Okay. When you roll to year two and that same person has no income, or let's say they only have 100 or 200,000, they may be able to fund something in their DB plan, but we would probably say don't fund anything into your DB plan. Fund your maximum amount on your 401k, right? Do the deferral, do the profit sharing. Maybe you can do a little bit on the DB plan side, but you can live by the 31% rule. Get a very, very small amount in, and then if the following year you make $3 million, then that's going to free up your funding so you can contribute a large amount. So you're looking at, huge amount year one, nothing year two, huge amount again in year three. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts to this, but that strategy can actually make a lot of sense. Now, in year two, you're going to have to pay us to administer the plan. Obviously that's not fun to do or not fun to pay someone when you're not getting a lot of value out of it. But I tell someone in that situation, look out over a 10-year period of time and say, look, if I max fund this thing for 5 years and for 5 years I don't fund anything, I think economically, when I look at the totality of that, this is going to make a lot of sense. You know what I mean? So you can't really look at 1 year in isolation and say, well, it was a waste to have it. No, this thing, if you look at it over time, it's going to make a lot of sense. So a lot of different ways you can manage it, but we do have a lot of litigation attorneys and where that type of stuff happens. And that's that's going to be very advantageous to them to work a plan that way to max it in the high years and minimize in the lower years,
Absolutely. And you used a crucial kind of word there is strategy. These plans come with a certain sort of strategy, way more so than a defined contribution plan, to where there's a lot of flexibility and kind of different ways that you can go about funding the plan. So I think that's a very helpful kind of example and real life kind of guidance in how they can take advantage of these plans still.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think that, you want to do your planning and you want to ask your questions and do a lot of that stuff up front. And you want to look at the totality of the plan. Don't look at just what you're funding in each individual year.
Mhm.
Go out and look at it. Hey, if I have this for this period of time, this is what I'm going to have in retirement. Does this economically make sense? And in your example, I think you'd find absolutely it's going to make a lot of sense for them, even with that volatile income.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Paul.